Here we go then, we have a 5-mark question. It's a very specific question, this one. Describe Saint Augustine's teachings on creation ex nihilo. Now, Saint Augustine wrote in a document called Confessions his thoughts on creating the world out of nothing. So we're very specific to that document. I'm not mentioning Genesis. It is just St Augustine and the teachings I can pull. Now, for a 5-mark question, we would say make 2 points. A point, evidence, explain. Point, evidence, explain. There are other ways you can do it, but this way you could get maximum marks with just 6 quick sentences. Here's how we would go about it. Firstly, Saint Augustine taught, state the obvious, that God created the world ex nihilo, which means out of nothing. Let's add the evidence to this. In his book Confessions, if you can't remember what it's called, just say in his writings. In his book Confessions, Augustine wrote, "From nothing then you created heaven and earth." So evidence. What does this mean? Well, this shows, it's a handy little starting phrase there. This shows that only God, who is omnipotent or powerful, could create from nothing, because nothing else has that power. Then next up, we need a second point for the full marks. So to show I've got a brand new point, I've left a line. Secondly, Augustine also taught, I'm going to make sure I link this to the question, that God could create ex nihilo because he is eternal and transcendent. These are all key terms: omnipotent, eternal, transcendent. They're not just for 2-mark questions, they're to use in all of your answers, which means he exists beyond space and time. He wrote, again this is from Confessions, "You were, and besides you nothing was." This explains, again handy phrase, this shows, this explains. That God existed before creation and is completely separate from it. so only he could create the universe from nothing. So just a quick recap then. The question was, describe St Augustine's teachings on creation ex nihilo. 5-mark question, so we would always suggest 2 points with the evidence for both if you can, but at least one piece of evidence for a 5-mark question, one source of wisdom and authority. Firstly, St Augustine taught that God created the world ex nihilo, which means out of nothing. In his book Confessions, Augustine wrote, "From nothing then you created heaven and earth." This shows that only God, who is omnipotent, all-powerful, could create from nothing, because nothing else has that power. Leave a line, because I want a second point to show I've got something else to say. Secondly, Augustine also taught that God could create ex nihilo because he's eternal and transcendent, which means he exists beyond space and time. He wrote, "You were, and besides you nothing was." This explains that God existed before creation and is completely separate from it, so only God can create from nothing. Hopefully that helps you out a little bit. If so, check out our other videos and give us a like and subscribe.